Welcome to Breathe California TV. Breathe California is the lung health organization for California. Typically, we're out there trying to help people with breathing difficulties, but I'm proud of being chair of the committee called the Environmental Health Committee that works to prevent problems. And nothing contributes more to our breathing difficulties than our lack of housing. Make people commute for a long distance. We're going to talk with Montez, the housing director of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, in about 30 seconds and see if we can't do something to lower what you're paying for your house. See you then.
It's given me a chance to go out and be with people who has the same problem. And it helps you to manage your life better too, because you hear different things from each person, and it's just been really helpful in many ways.
Welcome back. My name is Terry Trumbull. I'm a volunteer each week. We do a show for Breathe California. If you want to encourage your friends elsewhere in the world, you can also watch us on demand anytime by going to createtvsj.org. So today we're talking with Montez, the housing director of Silicon Valley Leadership Group. So this is supposed to be about air pollution. What in the heck are you doing here?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Terry.
So you're avoiding the question?
Well, you know, people don't necessarily think that air pollution and housing are related, but they're intricately related. And it's not just, oh, is there asbestos within the home? Are there lead paint issues? It's actually something kind of larger and community plan driven, right? So when we look at the way that our communities are laid out, not just here in the Bay Area, but nationally, and we look at where our transportation systems are, whether that's our federal highways, state, local, our bike lanes. Really, that connection between where homes are and how people move around those homes has a huge contribution to our air quality. We look at the amount of exhaust that comes out of our highways, and anything that we can do to reduce the amount of trips we have, reduce the length of our commutes, directly benefits our lung health. And you know, I grew up in the Los Angeles area, and when I moved out of the Los Angeles area, I stopped having chronic sinus infections. I stopped having asthma attacks, and my allergies overall were dramatically reduced. And this region, the Bay Area, has an opportunity to avoid becoming a smog-filled sky like what you have in Los Angeles. So
we're breathing unhealthy air, but of course LA is the worst in the country.
That's right. And really the way that we move forward in this region in planning how our communities are built out, in planning how our transportation systems are really in alignment with our housing, is going to play into how we have our long-term health and wellness in the region. And so, you know, with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, there's a big push to make sure that when we're looking at how that kind of community plan works, we're beginning to look at encouraging denser builds closer to our transportation hubs, so that people can walk outside of their home and walk to work, or jump on a bike because they're right next to a bike path, or get out onto VTA.
And neither of those produce one molecule of air pollution.
Right, right. So it's finding ways that we can cut that pollution level down, and really people, like I said, don't normally associate housing with that. But you know, recently I will say our local KQED, our local NPR affiliate, did a really interesting story about a gentleman who is working at Stanford University, and he's working you know, kind of at a lower income position in a support staff position at the university. And he's commuting from the Central Valley because he can't find affordable housing in Palo Alto. He can't find it anywhere in Silicon Valley. to support him and his family in a way that makes sense for him. And so he's making that commute so they have a higher quality of life. But what does that commute do to us here?
In perfect
right?
conditions, he's got 2 hours each way, which
Exactly.
ruins both of his quality of life. And then expand on what you were about to say about the quality of life for all of the areas he's driving through.
Exactly. We're getting that carbon emission. We're breathing in what that car is putting out. So when we look at the future of Silicon Valley, we have to be really conscientious about the kind of advocacy that we're doing around housing plans in each of our communities. Because it's not just something that San Jose can fix, it's not just something that Palo Alto can fix, but we need to make sure that we are all goal-oriented in looking at creating housing plans that look at affordability for all income levels, and housing plans that really are tied into our transportation infrastructure.
So just to kind of one last bit of reinforcement, and I don't know that you can help with this, but in 2000 I was on the County Planning Commission and I was astounded to know, I guess I shouldn't say astounded, kind of knew, but I just realized how bad it was, that our trip length, the distance between a home and a job, was 15.6 miles, and the second highest area in the country was 6.4.
Yep. Yeah.
And there is no way in the world that we can build a transportation network that can address that problem, but it can address it if we live closer to home.
Yeah, and this requires a lot of our elected officials, quite frankly, and our planning commissioners to be brave and to say, yes, this beautiful Valley of the Heart's Delight began around single-family homes, but we have a very different reality now. And we have a demand that has far outpaced our supply in terms of meeting the needs of not just the tech workers, but for every tech job, there's about 4 to 6 jobs, depending, that are immediately required to support that particular position in our local economy. So where are those people going to live? So it does require our elected officials and folks within, the position of power to be able to make these decisions about our community plans, to say, you know what, we do need more affordable housing. We do need to increase our density, and we need to start building in our infill areas. So looking at existing properties that may have held lower density housing and start building up, and not be afraid of building up, because we have a quality of life here that can certainly be maintained and I think improved upon when we think creatively.
So there's a zillion ways to go with this at this point, but you mentioned a study just before we went on air.
That's right.
50 metropolitan areas of the country, and where did we fit in terms of housing costs?
Well, that's actually a little scary. Out of 50 of the largest metropolitan areas in the nation, San Francisco's number 1, Oakland's number 2, and San Jose is right there at number 3 as being the worst places for renters, and that was out of Forbes.
Highest prices.
Exactly. Highest prices. The worst place to be a renter in the nation is within the Bay Area. And that's not attractive for a lot of the CEOs and the companies that are coming here. So the Silicon Valley Leadership Group represents almost 400 companies that are local, but also national and international, but have hubs here in Silicon Valley. And today, the 2015 CEO Business Climate Summit occurred this morning, actually, and a survey was released. And these CEOs are asked, what is one of the biggest concerns that you have in terms of your employees' needs and being here in this region? And housing was number 1. And housing has been number 1 since 2009. Since this survey's been in existence for quite a while, and it's able to kind of track that concern as we've been able to see the prices continue to go up.
So this is an old statistic, but I had a good friend who was a recruiter, and he said when he recruited an executive in for a Silicon Valley company, 25% resigned after accepting. In other words, they took the job, then they started to look for a house and said, no, I'm not coming.
Right, and we have to be
These are the richest people.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they want a quality of life that they'd get anywhere else in the nation. We have a talent pool here that is fantastic. We have some of the best universities in the world here contributing to that talent pool, but we have to be able to maintain that talent pool by making sure that they have somewhere to live and they're not commuting from the Central Valley, and that folks who are these high value employees are going to want to come here. And you know, the answer to that is creating more affordable housing stock so that we can bring down some of the pressure on the pricing across the market. It means getting creative and thinking about building up instead of out. Out meaning that way, right? Mm-hmm. And making sure that we continue to be somewhere that our local CEOs want to continue to build out, and to really invest here and to maintain ourselves as a world leader in innovation. We have to be innovative with our housing. And that's incredibly important as well to that part of quality of life when you look at this being a beautiful place to live. Because nobody wants to look up and see a brown sky. And we're incredibly lucky that we have our local open space. And the leadership group is also invested in recent campaigns to maintain open space. Measure Q, which was kind of more South County, including San Jose.
So again,
and
just
Measure
to be
AA.
clear here for our audience,
Sure.
The business in this area I consider to be an environmental group because they're smart enough to understand that we need a high quality of life.
Exactly.
Here.
So what makes this area so attractive, right? It's not just that there's this incredible talent pool, and all of these companies can work together to create new and innovative products and ideas, but that there's also this amazing natural wonders that surround us, right? We have redwoods as we go up north along the peninsula and south towards Santa Cruz. We have gorgeous habitat surrounding pretty much almost all of our cities have pieces that are just absolutely beautiful open space. And all of that plays a huge part in how this region is looked at as an investment opportunity for all of these companies. And of course, that all ties back into the value of your home.
So we're talking with Amanda Montez, Housing Director of the Leadership Group, which is 400 businesses, probably at a minimum the top 200 in size are in the group. And business wants more housing, a better quality of life for all of us. We're going to talk, how do we get more housing after this announcement?
The nice thing about Better Breathers Club is we go in and there's other people sitting around with oxygen. It's almost a relief that everybody looks the same in the room. It's a funny thing to say, but it's a good feeling. Breathe California means having resources available to us that will help guide us and make our lives easier.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. We're talking with Amanda Montez. 2 or 3 years ago, I had the good fortune to meet her, and all the different events and organizations we work together on. She's been a fireball who's thrown all sorts of excitement and good deeds into the organization. So you're relatively recent with the leadership group. You started this week?
Last week, yes, actually.
And I'm getting the same vibe here. So just one last thing about that statistic that you mentioned. We're the third worst housing rates. In other words, it's really expensive here.
Yes.
But the Mercury has an article today. The only major city in this country that is more than 50% suburban is San Jose.
Yes, 500,000 homes is kind of one of the largest areas that we consider bedroom, and that's us, San Jose.
And you can make the argument that for all of the people below the CEOs who might be more prone to be in Los Altos Hills or Saratoga, they've got to have access to housing and less pollution, yet we've not built a city that way. So one of the things that you and I've worked on are urban villages, which could make a difference. Yeah. How would that make a difference in San Jose on housing?
Sure. So I just mentioned that number 500,000. I threw that out real quick. But essentially, San Jose has about 500,000 folks out of that million population who leave San Jose every day to go to work. And there's not an equal number of people coming back. So we have a jobs to housing imbalance within San Jose, and we're considered the nation's largest bedroom community for that reason. Right? And so what the idea of an urban village would do is to essentially allow for retail or office space at the ground level and homes at an upper level. And you look at Santana Row as a successful way to do that, where they have condominiums and apartments above successful retail and office space as well. So we want to be able to see more opportunities like that really taking off, where people won't have these long commutes, where they can have a livable, walkable community at their fingertips, right out the front door. And there are very unique communities within San Jose that are ripe for that type of opportunity. Obviously, those type of opportunities have to be developed with an eye towards retaining affordable housing that's existing and creating more affordable housing as a part of that process. We may have more homes available than anywhere else within Silicon Valley in San Jose. That doesn't mean necessarily it's the right housing stock in terms of looking equitably across the board in what we need to be able to offer all of our residents. Looking at that kind of equality issue and equality of opportunity for housing in the region, that's actually led the leadership group to stand with many innovative leaders in our local city councils for housing impact fees. And these housing impact fees
which is
are really
unheard
important.
of at state level. The industry has fought in them tooth and nail. So explain what a housing impact fee is.
So when redevelopment agencies went the way of the dinosaurs in 2011, cities had to kind of figure out, well, how are we going to do affordable housing without that type of a resource? And a lot of the cities that were really taking advantage of redevelopment agencies to create affordable housing had a significant problem on their hands. And housing impact fees essentially look at that nexus, that connection point between where a new development being built would bring in an individual who would then cause, as I mentioned before, kind of that tech worker who then generates 4 additional jobs. Well, that unit of housing being completed would generate the need for additional housing that would be a part of the life of the individuals who are in that service industry, who would be supporting somebody in that perhaps market level or high income unit. And so that idea is that that nexus creates the ability for cities to then say, all right, developers, this is an opportunity for cities to capture back some funding that can then be put in a housing trust. And that housing trust can then be used to build affordable housing. That is absolutely necessary due to that nexus to house and create homes for all of these folks who are a part of this larger economy. And so San Jose recently passed a housing impact fee. We've seen the same in Mountain View, in Sunnyvale. And so this is one of those trends that is moving forward and is very much a local innovation. It's not necessarily new in terms of a national style of doing things, but it's new here. And we're doing it our way, and this is one of Silicon Valley's ways.
And our problem is probably unique.
Exactly. We are unique, so we have to be unique in how we address it.
So I know your position regularly gets out and argues for housing, which is just wonderful because you're highlighting 500,000 San Jose residents pick up and go to jobs in our North County or even as far as San Francisco, and yet I live in one of those communities that says we got too much housing, too many people, yet they added 5,000 jobs in the last 3 years. How do we get some cooperation? I mean, obviously the ideal world would be to get more jobs in San Jose and more homes in the North County area.
And absolutely, this is an opportunity for Breathe California advocates, quite frankly, to come out when you see opportunities for affordable housing developments at your local city councils, and to come out and use your voice and say, hey, it's not just important for the residents of the potential residents of an affordable housing development that we build this. It's important for the entire community, for our health, for our well-being, for our region's air quality. And so really what has been missing, I think, a lot of time has been that public upswell and that support behind the types of policies like affordable housing development that can make a difference in our air quality and quality of life. So asking people to get up and head over to City Hall and to let people know how they feel, and that it matters to them that their children can breathe well.
Yeah, I think you made an important point. There are so many organizations that are going to be better off with more housing. I mean, for starters, we normally think of housing driving transportation, but the fact is our light rail system is the weakest at paying for itself because we have nobody living near the spots. We put a light rail system in and then allowed these great big huge beautiful tracts of land to be made into single-story office space, much of it which has been abandoned due to manufacturing moving. But we've got to have enough housing that people can walk to light rail or BART or high-speed rail and be able to pay for the transportation system.
Well, and you just made a really good point about kind of looking at the land that we have and how we're going to use it. And right now, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors has staff looking at all of the county-owned land. And an initiative that the Silicon Valley Leadership Group has signed on to, the Santa Clara County Community Plan to End Homelessness, is also looking at all of the potential parcels within all of the cities that are city-owned or county-owned, and looking at those as opportunities, also looking at VTA land, where affordable housing could be built, because we know that, quite frankly, to end homelessness, you need homes, right? And to improve our situation, we're going to have to build. And we very honestly have an embarrassing situation here where we have the nation's largest unsheltered homeless population.
Yeah, Amanda's previous job was working on homeless issues, and they're inseparable from what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It means more people. I'm stealing your thunder. I'm sorry.
No,
but
no.
High housing costs means that more people live in our creeks, which create massive environmental problems.
Exactly, and the number one reason for people becoming homeless and experiencing homelessness one time, potentially two times in their life, is unaffordable housing. And so when you look at that and you can see the kind of people who locally have experienced homelessness, these aren't folks who have made major missteps in life. They're people who maybe just needed a hand up once or twice, and the type of thing that we might normally get from a supportive family if someone doesn't happen to have that. Where do they go, and how does that contribute to our problems if we're unable to recognize that the root of that was affordable housing? Right?
I'd even go a step further, which is, to me, if you're homeless, you're so worried about maintaining the basics in life, you're not, no matter how qualified you are, you're not going to be terribly good at grabbing one of the jobs around you.
Absolutely. And so to have that kind of opportunity, I mean, to be honest, if you're experiencing homelessness, you don't have an alarm clock that's going to wake you up, and you are going to be seeking somewhere to take a shower. And so getting to work is that much harder. So again, this kind of takes us back to looking at the problems that we have locally and realizing that affordable housing plays a major role in a lot of our issues that we're grappling with. And we need our local elected officials and our friends on many of our local planning commissions to help us out and to recognize that need.
So it's real easy, since neither you or I are elected, although hopefully we'll see you there at some point, for us to say, hey, local officials, sure, you're likely to get thrown out of office over this, but go ahead and build more housing.
And you're right.
How do we?
And they need the support of the people who recognize that there's this nexus point between good air quality, good quality of life, and good affordable housing.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of companies that are putting their money where their mouth is when they say that they want more affordable housing, and you can see that with a lot of the the Silicon Valley Leadership Group member companies investing in institutions like the Housing Trust. And the Housing Trust is something that was built up locally by thought leaders in the corporate sector, looking at that long-term need for affordable housing. So we have folks, in the business sector who are willing to invest, and they've done that. The Turkey Trot raised funds for the Housing Trust this past year, and that continues to be one of those areas that we see a lot of corporate investment. And so we need to see that matched. And I think that our public sector is also encouraging additional funding to come out from the corporate sector. So continuing to develop that relationship is important, because you're right, it can't just all be our elected officials in the public sector. It's a community-wide problem, and it has to be a community-wide answer.
Yeah, I mean, we clearly in my city, Palo Alto, had a very negative reaction this last election. The school district doesn't want more housing because they think it means less money for students, and yet there's a vast surplus of jobs, and the environment is made worse by all of those people driving through every stretch of town. So we got about a minute left. How would you summarize your position on housing in the area?
Well, housing, affordable housing for people at all income levels is something that is directly connected to our quality of life here and our quality of air, our air quality. And so I hope that those who are concerned about quality of life and our air quality will come out and join the Silicon Valley Leadership Group in advocating for more affordable housing in our city councils. And at work, your employers have a role to play as well, ensuring that they're investing in affordable housing too.
Thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking with Amanda Montez, the housing director of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. We will see you next week with another speaker that hopefully is half as good. Some of you may recall that last week we had Dr. Alan Goldsobel on with an introduction to lung health, and I think next week we will probably have him talking about how the 13, 14 different lung problems occur. See you then.